Hey, good morning, guys. Wanted to do a little video. We got the Alabama opener for muzzleloader season today, and I'm just hanging out here, getting ready to go hunting here in a bit. And didn't want to go early this morning. It was really, really cold, and sometimes them old muzzleloaders like to hang fire when it's really cold. So I'm just going to sit out and wait till this evening. And going to go hunt a property and try to harvest a nice deer. Or right now, I'm basically looking for some meat. Anything comes through that I can get some meat, I'd prefer to get some meat first. Maybe a doe, even a young buck comes through, I may even take him. But this morning I want to touch up a little bit on the whitetail deer home ranging and the rut and how it works here in the South. We are here in the southern Appalachian Mountains and northeast Alabama. Right here is a property that shows pretty much about what type of area I hunt, what stuff looks like around here, the terrain. Everything's pretty similar. I don't hunt this particular piece here, but I hunt stuff that's similar to this. So this is a property that I mapped out and that I scouted for someone. So going to start out talking about the bucks, what they are doing in the summertime. You got what I like to call summering area. It'd be a place where a buck or a few bucks might get together and hang out somewhere just like this right here, kind of a more of an open area because they're in velvet and they don't really like to bump their horns on anything. So they'll get down in here and some of this more open timber and bed, and they'll stay kind of out of the thick where it's real thick and nasty, because if they get in there, they'll tear that velvet, and it really puts a stress on them, and they get swarmed by flies and bees and all other sorts of things, and they get those antlers infected. Could be a long summer for them, so they'll stay kind of in a more open area like this right here, somewhere on adjacent to a field or where they have some water or something like that. And they'll have several spots like this in the summer where they don't tear up that rack. Like right here, here's another summering area adjacent to this food plot, and then another food plot over here, and another buck summering area be right in here. And these bucks, they may all be some of the same deer. Some of their home ranges is going to overlap during the summer like this. If this was summertime, and when their home ranges overlap like that, they're all getting along and having a good time. And the does, they got their little summering areas. They got places where they want to try to stay away from predators because a lot of them have, fawns, and so they'll bed something more safe, more thick, more nasty. And you don't hardly see them as much in the summer, and then until they get their fawns, up and where they can travel with their mom, and then they'll come out into the more open areas later on in their fawning period. But once the deer transition through the summer and everything becomes fall, the dominant breeding buck that's in this area, and his home range can run anywhere from 640 acres to 1,280 acres, and maybe even a little bit larger. That's 2 square miles. 1,280 would be 2 square miles. Most of them in the hill country like this is about 640 acres, which is a square mile. So, but you could have different home ranges overlapping in this area. They may be a dominant buck from this area that's home range overlaps with a dominant breeding buck from this area. And they'll duke it out over that somewhere when they run into each other during the rut, and they'll, claim rights to this area right here. One of them will, but every once in a while, you're still going to have the buck that's from this area, from your neighboring property. He's going to stroll through your area, and then your buck's going to stroll through your neighbor's area. There's nothing you can do about that, uh, except for killing. And maybe what we'll talk about today might be able to help some of you guys do that. So, some of these summering areas, you could have up to 15, 20 bucks living in an area, you know, about the size of probably 100 acres. And then over here, about 100 acres. And they're all overlapping. They don't follow property lines like humans. They got their own little lines that they create. So, when you're looking at property lines, don't think the deer is going to just follow a square like we have to follow, because they don't have laws and rules and regulations like we do. All they know, to do is to survive. So, don't just look at a box on a map and think that's the only place a deer is going to be, because you're going to prove yourself wrong really quick. And anyway, we'll start talking a little bit more about the rut. I just kind of want to touch on what bucks do in the summer. A lot of people don't understand why they got deer on camera in the summer, and then as it starts getting cooler and it starts turning to fall, that the deer disappear. A lot of things, what's going on is, this buck that's in this area over here, well, he finally sheds velvet around 1st of October down here in Alabama. Other parts of the country is going to be different. Here in the South, into September, early October, he'll peel the velvet, and then he can start getting into places he ain't got to worry about messing up his rack. So he'll go off in some thicker areas, and he'll start looking around. He's making rubs, and he's going to start monitoring his does. He's going to go through and find where all the does are bedding, and he's going to mark them. When I say mark them, he'll put down a rub and a scrape, and he'll do that to every one of them, starting out something like that, and then he'll return to the summering area to check what's going on. And he'll continue to feed in that summering area, and you'll get him on your camera the whole month of October until about October the 20th. He'll leave out again, and he'll make another tour. This time he's going to lay down more scrapes and rubs. It's going to take him a little bit longer before he gets back this time, because he's starting to, temperatures are falling, daylight's getting shorter, and he knows it's time to breed. So he'll return again, and you'll catch a couple pictures of him wherever you got your cameras located on this property, and you'll see him throughout the month of October. And you'll have a large acorn drop, because we got acorns right here, and oaks growing all over these hills. And so some of these feeding areas is not going to be as good for him at that point in time. He will want, get some of those acorns, and he'll get down in these acorn flats, and he's in here and he's feeding and all that stuff. What I like to do when this all starts to occur is I'll start checking feeding areas. I'll go over here and I'll check. I know this was a summer area, and I'll check it for any type of activity from a buck, like rubs and scrapes, because I know this was this feeding area in the summer. So I'm over here and I'm checking, and I'm looking for rubs and scrapes. Don't see any, and he just totally abandoned this area. So he's went and relocated. I got to find him. I'll go over here, and I know there's a doe bedding area. I've been jumping does out of here. All right. As I walk through here, I just find a bunch of rubs and scrapes all around, on the downwind side of this doe bedding area. It's just tore up pretty good. You'll see a lot of rubs and scrapes on the edge of these fields, and most of those is done at night. So I'll start going to doe bedding areas and feeding areas, and I'm looking for rubs and scrapes. So the doe bedding areas, probably about mid-November here in Alabama, they'll light up with just rubs and scrapes. I'm talking about just every one of them. All these doe bedding areas all overlap the same as the buck bedding areas, and all the doe home ranges, they all overlap the same as the buck home ranges. So they may be 4 or 5 does in this herd, 4 or 5 does in this herd, and they really don't communicate with one another because they travel in little small groups, little herds, and bucks do the same thing. You may have 4 or 5 bucks over here and 4 or 5 bucks over here, and they're all summering buddies, and then all of a sudden they're not. So get out, check your doe bedding areas, and check the downwind side of them. Check the predominant wind in your area, and check the downhill sides of the. If you're finding doe bedding in hills, check the downwind side. Like on a south wind, that buck would travel on the downhill side of that. On a north wind, he might travel right here, and then you got to put in account your thermals too. They'll also use thermals to when they're marking doe bedding areas. So there's a lot that comes in effect this time of year. Right now it is the 14th of November, and all my doe bedding areas on the outside of them are eat up with rubs and scrapes. Usually when that happens, there's some breeding going on. I'm not saying it's full blown rut, but there's probably been a doe in some of these breeding areas that has went in the heat, and the big buck has went off and with her and bred. Like usually the oldest one, she'll come in heat first because she's a lot older, more mature, and she'll be more willing to let him breed her. So it's not going to be that big of a chase. So he's not going to have to run her all over God's creation to breed her. He'll just go down in here, a couple 100 yards, and she'll let him breed her, and he'll stay with her for, I don't know, 36 hours. And then she's out of heat. And she'll go back in there, and he's done bred her, and all of his signs still here, He's got all of his rubs and all of his scrapes everywhere around these doe bedding areas. And he'll go over here and he'll check this one. And when he finds a doe in heat over here, he'll follow her out. It'll be the older doe, the old monarch. She'll get bred first. And then she'll go back in and start, doing her thing again. This all starts around, mid-November. We just had the youth hunt. So right after youth hunt, there'll be a few of our older does go into heat. And then in December, about mid-December, we'll have our a second wave of the rut come through. Let me get a drink of my coffee here. And the bucks start doing the same thing all over. Now, he'll return right after this first little breeding period to some of these feeding areas, and you'll start catching a few pictures of him, and you'll notice he's lost a little weight. You'll see it because he's been doing so much more traveling instead of being, pinned up in one area like he was back in the summer. And then your trail cameras will light up for a few days, and then the pictures just die again. And there he'll go. He'll go that mid-December month, and he'll start checking them bedding areas again, and he'll catch that next group of does that come in the heat. And he'll do this every month until there's no more does going in heat. And that's just how it goes. You'll have a wave in November, a wave in December, a big wave in January, because that's when a lot of our immature, younger does go in the heat. And then you'll have where the fawns that was born from the previous year will go in the heat in February, and that will be the end of the breeding cycle. And every once in a while, you'll have one that goes into March, because I've been out turkey hunting in March and still finding fresh rubs and scrapes, and I have actually seen bucks with no horns still following does, so where their antlers have done fell off, and they'll still be following does. And I mean, a big old buck one year. I mean, I could see the blood on his head, and he was out there following a doe with his nose right up her tail end. So that's the way it is. And People think there's just this one moment of breeding, and it's not that way. There is a big process and a big cycle of breeding all over the country. But what you want to find out about your area is when is the peak breeding area. And here in Alabama, northeast Alabama, where I'm at, peak breeding is going to start between December the 14th and January the 14th. That would be a real hot cycle for the does. And right through that cycle is when you can really get in and do a good job at hunting some of these doe bedding areas. And you can catch him cruising some of these oak flats and stuff like that. He'll be in a more open area looking around and trying to find a doe that's wanting to breed. He'll be checking his scrapes. He'll keep them scrapes pretty much. You'll see, like, in November, a fresh scrape. Well, a few weeks later, that scrape ain't fresh anymore. Like, he ain't cleaned it. Then in December, that scrape that was fresh in November will be refreshened. And you can hang a camera up and watch them. You find a big fresh scrape, you can put a camera over it, leave it alone, and there'll be a big old buck come through, and he'll hit it. And you can leave that camera there, and the following month, about a month later, you'll see him come through, and he'll clean that scrape again, and he'll mark that with a rub, and he'll have a licking branch. And other deer that walk through the area, they'll stop and check the scrape and add their scent to it and whatnot. That's how they communicate. And they do use calls to one another, that other forms of communication. This is not a communication video. I didn't want to get into that, but of course, does got bleats and balls, and buck, you got grunts and growls and all this snort wheezing and stuff. That it's a different video, a different time. But anyway, get in here and look at this. So you got this buck summering area. This is gonna go just completely cold come wintertime, come rut. He ain't got no reason to come back here. He just stayed here long enough to get through the misery of the velvet, and that's over with. He may come back to this food plot, and he may come back and check this doe bedding area, but he's done with this. He don't have to be here anymore. There's nothing there for him, later on after the summer. So your summering areas where you're getting all your big bucks in the summer usually don't end up being a good hunting area for him until later season. He may return here. If there's something there for him, to benefit him, he may come back here. But his winter area may be a mile or two away where he's going to stay at in the winter, where he may bed at. He may bed down in here. If there's hills around, you can bet your paycheck every week, Big Bucks is going to use them hills. So I do have a hill country video on here. It talks about buck bedding and stuff like that. But I just kind of wanted to explain and touch on what I've been experienced for the last few years. I really noticed this probably 7-8 years back. I started paying more attention to what deer do. Well, I'll tell you what. I put out cameras, and then I noticed, the deer disappear. And everybody always like, man, I got all these big bucks, and they're showing you pictures, and all of a sudden you see them later on at the store somewhere. Something like, man, you still getting them big buck pictures? No, I ain't seen one in weeks, man. They're gone. What happened? Well, what happened? It wasn't nothing that you did wrong necessarily. Yeah, you could have put a lot of pressure on the deer, and you could have pushed him out of the area. But if you got this camera in a feeding area, he's going to be more acceptable to your scent than he would if you put it in a bedding area and you kept going back. So put your trail cameras, I don't know whichever ones you guys run, put them in the feeding areas. And that way you can monitor what's in your area, and you can see the whole process of the bucks growing their antlers and all of that, and you can pretty, write down or take a journal of what bucks is in your area. Like, over here you got a 6, a 8, a 10, and a big dominant 12 pointer. And you can journal that, remember that. And then over here you may have something totally different. And then you may have some of these same deer running back and forth to one another. They do that. They like to check on one another, see what one another's doing. Like the other night, I had one of the dominant bucks in my area, about 140-inch 8 pointer, I guess. I mean, he's a monster of an 8. He had a little 4 pointer there, and he's sitting there letting that little 4 pointer just spar him, and he never once rolled that little deer or nothing. He was just letting him play. He'd lean his head over and let that little buck, play fight with him. And that's how they learn, what they're supposed to do. The little bucks, they'll follow them big bucks and watch them. Big bucks will let the little bucks go first in some scenarios and use them kind of as a toady, and kind of let them, walk out first sometimes. And then sometimes the dominant buck of the area may be leading, and you may see a young buck behind him somewhere. That don't mean that he's that deer's daddy or nothing like that. People often see a small buck with a big buck and they think, well, that's that deer's dad. Well, not necessarily. That little buck could have came from 5 miles over here from where he got his tail whooped, and he just decided to head out, and he ran into this deer, and this deer ain't as mean as the one that ran him off. Life's really hard on a young buck. A lot of people don't realize that. They're over here in these summer bedding areas with their mom, and all of a sudden, they start getting a little frisky with her, and she gonna kick them in the head, and you'll see them a lot of times with a bent rack, crooked rack, missing a point. A lot of people think them are cold deer. Well, what that is from where a doe kicked them in the head somewhere in their antlers when they was in velvet, and it disformed their rack. So yeah, those first few racks for a buck sometimes, until his mama gets him run out, they may be crooked or whatever. So don't pay no attention to what people say about spikes being cold bucks, or if you see a deer with a crooked horn or something. I mean, he was probably injured. He could have been bumped into by a car, or could have got stuck in a fence, or his mom or another doe might have kicked him for getting too close to a fawn. Does and bucks really do not have much to do with one another unless it's breeding. So they're kind of like totally different species. They don't really even hang out with one another unless they're breeding. You hardly ever see a field full of does and a field full of bucks, and they're all together in the summer. Most of the time, the bucks will be on one side and the does will be on the other. That's because they got fawns, and they don't like their fawns around those big bucks. And the big bucks won't really allow the does in their area because they don't want them, to get kicked in the head. So they'll try to chase them out of their area during the summer months, because when they got those horns like that with that velvet, they really just want to be left alone. They don't want to bump heads with nobody. They don't want the old doe kicking them. So they may give her a loud grunt and chase her out of there, and she'll go somewhere else. She knows she don't need to be around that big buck in the summer, and he knows he don't need her. So that's just the way it goes. Later on, in late season, right before deer season ends, you can check your feeding areas sometimes, and you'll see bucks and does out there together then. And they're not out there to breed then. They're just out there to eat, put on some weight before it gets really cold in the months of February and March. So I just wanted to touch on this today. I see a lot of stuff out there these days that very misleading to folks. A lot of people don't understand why their deer disappear, and they may have you may have a boy or a young man that shows up and all he's had on camera all summer is does. Well, that's good, because come rut, he'll have some bucks show up in that area. He's going to be the guy that's got a good deer show up. So don't always, get mad because you ain't got a 12 pointer in the summertime. It's not actually a good thing. But also, I like to lay these cameras down once I find out where a buck is bedding. I like to put it on a travel corridor, and I'll put a cell camera on that now. I usually use card cameras in the feeding areas because here in Alabama you can bait. Some properties I do have corn out, and I like to put just a regular camera over my corn. Because if I'm going to go back and put bait down, there's going to be scent there anyway. I might as well just change a card and batteries while I'm there too. So the deer kind of allow that camera to be there, and they won't be as tore up about it. But over in the, like, you got a buck bedded down here in this point right here where I got my cursor. You could put a camera out on one of these flats and try to catch him going in there to bed somewhere. I would like to use a cell camera for that because you don't want to have to booger up any of your buck bedding areas going in and checking cards. If you don't have a cell camera, I suggest not even putting a camera out unless you're going to do it and leave it out for an entire year. There ain't no need in going in a bedding area with a camera. So wanted to touch on that. As far as the doe bedding areas, you can find those doe bedding areas in the summer. Getting out scouting, you can you'll go in, you can jump them, and you can mark them with whatever mapping app you're using. I like to use Spartan Forge. That's my app. It's my go-to. I really enjoy that app. That's a good app, and I really enjoy that they're still being creative and they're still creating new things to go with their app. It's not just mapping and that's it. There's a whole lot of technology there. If we're not using technology, with all the technology that's out there these days, then kind of makes us one-sided. I like technology. I enjoy creating YouTube videos. I enjoy creating content for people. I enjoy people watching my videos. I enjoy comments. You guys would like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Ask some questions if you need any questions. I'm here for the new type of hunter, guy that's trying to figure out, what's going on and why things are happening. I've got 35 years of deer hunting experience. I've killed a lot of deer. I'm not saying they're all monsters or anything like that, but I'm known as a really good deer hunter, but I'm an even better turkey hunter. So I can help guys with deer or turkey. I love to get out and scout properties for people also, and I like to mark the properties for them and tell them where their does are bedding, where their bucks are bedding. I like to help set up the property, or at least give them some advice. And I do a lot of this free of charge. I don't, if they want to offer me a meal or something, that'd be fine. A lot of times we'll just sit down and we'll use the maps and we'll map out their area, and then we'll go in. And a lot of these guys nowadays with these big leases, they've got four wheelers and side by sides. They'll take you through and show you what their setups are and this and that. And a lot of guys don't have anybody to talk to because they spend all their money on a lease that's just for them, and they don't have any buddies that hunts with them. So you kind of be their hunting buddy, but you don't hunt with them. That's kind of like what I do, and I enjoy that. They just need somebody to talk to also. They just don't want to have another hunter involved in their area because they're trying to keep the pressure down. They do, practicing QDMA and stuff like that, and that's fine. This has been a Backwoods Studio production. If you would, like and subscribe. If you like our content, go over to Facebook and follow us on our webpage over at Backwoods Mafia.